And let's talk about the newest show that's coming out and like the worst people that we know in the DC universe, Creature Commandos.
Creature Commandos.
I'm interested to know, as someone who's new to this entire world, what was your take on Creature Commandos? What did you think it was about?
I knew kind of the general premise of the show, which is, a ragtag group of misfit monsters come together to save the day, hopefully. And I knew it was sort of related to Suicide Squad, but I mean, beyond that, it was all new to me.
What in the holy hell?
This is the Belle Reve Non-Human Interment Division. For over 50 years, only those at the uppermost levels of security clearance are aware of its existence.
I have never heard of these characters before. And
Most people
Coy,
haven't.
I mean, right, Coy, I mean, that's where I turn to you as the comic expert. Should we know who these people are?
So there are comic runs of them adjacent, but this is definitely a different canon. Like there is a run from Grant Morrison that features Frankenstein that actually inspired Peacemaker and some of the villainous choices that were chosen in Peacemaker. There's a great Jeff Lemire run that has Frankenstein with some of these members, but even that's a different canon.
And it's totally different than what we've read. For the people who have read the comics, this is its own thing. There are only two things that you really need to watch or know. And even then, they explain it in the first 10 minutes.
Right.
That's the Suicide Squad and the Peacemaker series, which are both you can stream on Max.
There isn't a canon. Like, you don't have to have read anything to get all the enjoyment of it. And that feels like the format they're going for is, let's take these completely obscure characters, make them approachable, but tell the craziest story possible.
Right. I mean, is that kind of what you think James Gunn's, vision for the future of this universe is going to look like?
Absolutely. And it's why I have been singing James Gunn's praises for Mountaintops forever. I think that he understands how to make comic book content cinematic and interesting and fun, but still give it the gravity of these situations. These are like world-ending situations.
Yeah.
And his style is all over it, right? The fight scenes are so cool. And the sound design, the music was so cinematic that it just bleeds James Gunn.
Right.
And it's why everybody was like, he is going to be incredible. Every project he puts in is going to be amazing. And I think we kind of see that now. Coy, you have to tell us what the difference between Task Force X and Task Force M is. You have to tell the class.
That's actually a new canon to this story. Okay. So it's had a few variations in there, but the whole idea is to use monsters because that's fodder. It's collateral damage. So in this story, they're basically making it so Waller got a slap in the wrist so she can't use humans anymore, so they use monsters. And that is historically what the comics have done, whether it's in World War I with some of the characters we meet, whether it's experiments going into the future. And I think it's a really genius way to kick off something as broad as the DCU. If you start this weird, how crazy can it go?
I know you all aren't exactly enthusiastic about this mission, but...
General, I believe you've read us wrong. We're delighted to be here and delighted to serve our country.
Okay. Great.
So let's dive into these first two episodes, which are now available to stream on Max. I know sort of who Amanda Waller is, played by Viola Davis, great actress.
Yeah.
I love actresses. But so she's gathering together this group of misfits that include, a guy who's on fire, Frankenstein. I mean, what is her end game? What's her goal? That I don't know.
So that's the thing. Amanda Waller is messy, right?
Yeah,
And she kind of hides behind this whole thought of, I'm doing this for the greater good. And the big difference between the Suicide Squad, which is what you're referencing, where she takes criminals and she figures, okay, because they're criminals, no one's going to care. And she gets told not to, she moves to these monsters. But the tea is her daughter is the one who exposed what she was doing.
Okay.
So the reason why she's not able to work with humans anymore is because her daughter went on live and was like, yo, they out here sending out criminals. This is not right. This is not humane.
By using these prisoners, I think we can arguably circumvent our new restrictions.
Arguably? How?
Congress said we can't use human prisoners. These assholes aren't human.
I mean, these are characters who they're not even anti-heroes. They're openly villainous, a lot of them.
Yeah.
But we still kind of have to root for them. I mean, is that something that pops up a lot, in the stuff that you've read? Like
Creature Commandos comics are interesting because they're inherently monsters. And what I think James Gunn does really well is humanizes things that we would judge otherwise. So in the Suicide Squad, these are villains that we're learning have more layers underneath them. And it's more about our perception of villains, whereas monsters, that's a terrifying entity. It's a full-on monster. So how do you find that different perception? And I love the idea of us using the found family idea that James Gunn does so well. And I think, speaking to what Frankie's saying, why this is such a unique vision is he does this uniting so well where we can identify with people we wouldn't normally be able to. So even beyond villains, literal monsters. And I love that James Gunn adds a musicality and he adds this fun fight style, because to me, the reason I love comics is you're directing the space between the panels. Like when you're flipping a page or when you're looking panel to panel, you're the actor, you're the writer, you're the director, you're controlling that. And James Gunn sees how to make that approachable, but still so nerdy. So it's kind of the best of both worlds, where people like me can be like, how did they adapt Creature Commandos? And people that don't know these characters can be nerdy with us, alongside us, going on this crazy journey, because family unites everybody.
Right.
But to your point earlier, I do think that there's a trend where we're following people that we're like, these people are terrible, but I love them anyway.
Yeah.
But I don't think that that's this. I think that we're finding out what it's like to be misunderstood because of the way that you look. Unlike the Suicide Squad, those people did it. Like they on the Suicide Squad, they in jail because they were out here doing things they weren't supposed to do. And honestly, I feel like the Suicide Squad gets more chances because they're like attractive fighters.
Right.
Like, Harley Quinn be in and out of Arkham, they don't care. But like, especially like in the second episode, we watched the Bride story and I'm sitting here trying to figure out, why is she in jail?
Right.
You know what I mean? Because she's a corpse. Like, is she a corpse? I don't know.
Well, no, she's a reanimated corpse.
Yeah.
She's like, is that offensive to call her a corpse?
I don't know. I don't know what the undead prefer us to say about them. Maybe that, just the undead. The people,
Because like, it's hard because she's in animation. But I wondered, like, how do people interact with her? Are they terrified when they see her? Does she smell? You think she smells?
Oh, she probably stinks.
Dang.
Dr. Phosphorus probably smells too, right?
I mean, he's just emitting radiation.
Weasel.
What is it?
Weasel smells terrible.
Yeah.
These are important things I need to know when I'm watching a show.
Yeah.
I am making joke. For a minute, I think you're going to make mess in your pants, huh?
I was never gonna...
Very close to messing his pants.
I wasn't even in the vicinity of doing that.
And I think one thesis that they're trying to push out there is like, what do we classify as humans?
Right.
Like the Suicide Squad, they are all criminals, but we still see them as human. They cast like the best looking people, like it's just Elba and stuff like that to be these criminals, and Margot Robbie, versus like these monsters who's like a corpse bride, a man who's on fire, radioactive fire, a fish woman, and
a weasel,
a
literal
weasel. Which, do you remember how he looks in live action?
I barely remember.
Terrifying. Yeah.
Is he more cuddly in this version for you?
I think he looks like he smells less. Like he looks like he stinks so bad. I'm really
They
big
all
on
stink.
smell.
They all stink.
Yeah.
I bet Rick Flag smells good. He seems like a cologne man. He's got an aura.
He's got a musk.
Yeah. He
That's
seems
why
like
the princess was throwing it at him.
Fair enough.
You know what I mean?
That man doesn't stink if that much thrown at him. I'm just saying.
I think it was so great character building to see him decline a princess. You know what I mean? Like offer it to be like, I have a job to do. And I was like, that's right, Rick Flag. But also like I felt connected to the princess because I was like, same. You know what I mean?
Can we also commend Rick Flag's performance? Like what Frank Grillo's doing, usually you cast voice actors in voice roles, but we're having these actors develop into their live action counterparts depending. Like we had Viola Davis in live action first and animation, but these are going to be our live action version, our video game version, our animated version. Each one of these actors is absolutely slaying as their animated selves. And voice acting is such a different tool than acting. So what Frank Grillo's done so far has been insane as someone known for his on-screen acting.
It's a gamble. It's a gamble to cast across boards. And I mean, how did you feel about the performances? Like, were you sold on all of them?
I mean, I loved all the performances, but I think that's what I was excited about. I'm not necessarily an adult animation person, but I mean, again, like Viola Davis, Indira Varma as the bride, and Zoe Chao as Nina, Alan Tudyk, who is like
He's
king of voice.
He's the king of voice acting. We can't use Ali.
That's why I didn't mention him. I'm like, he is the man
But
for this.
David Harbour is Frankenstein, Maria Bakalova as the princess. So like, it's like a good, solid group of actors.
And I think that adds into the entire experience. What I love about animation, particularly this animation, is it feels like it can go to depths that live action may not be able to.
Yeah.
And these are all very super powered individuals, and they do such a great job because they have full control of how we see it at power scaling, like fighting.
What do you mean by power scaling?
So like figuring out who's the strongest, like scaling and listing out like strongest to weakest. Who's the strongest person on the Creature Commandos?
How would you rank that?
Let me look through
like
it.
Phosphorus.
Like who would, right? You would say that Phosphorus is the strongest.
Yeah.
I would say the bride.
That power structure thing, I really like that because I think a real way to see into this is the eye line that is our regularly powered person. I love that Rick Flag is kind of our eye line into all of this. And what you said about monsters, I think is so true. It's an evolution of perception. Like they didn't necessarily. We don't know what they've done except for be who they are. And what's more ostracizing than being judged without even doing the crime? Necessarily. We're going to find out.
I am not human.
Oh, stop with the bluff, fish. You're the only one of us freaks who is. We're monsters. You're a human being with gills.
The world does not see it this way.
Well, when has the world ever been right?
I think they do such a great job of showing like how they're almost discriminated against, right? Like we see in the Suicide Squad that they did what they in jail for. Like we like, all right, well, I guess you can rehabilitate. But in this case, I feel like, especially when we get to the bride story, we get to see the human side of it. And because this is a series, they have the room to really flesh out the characters in the way that we don't get in the Suicide Squad because there's only like 2.5 hours.
Exactly, yeah.
You know, so we really get to know it. The fight scenes too made me know the characters a little bit more as well, right?
Okay, how? How do you mean?
That first fight scene with Dr. Phosphorus and Rick Flag Sr.
That is ultimate. That is truly.
It's a crazy scene, honestly. And it was a couple of things. I was like, thank God Rick Flag declined the booty, right? Because he wouldn't have caught Dr. Phosphorus in his room if he was out, you know, getting tail.
Yeah.
So I was like, that resolved made sure that he continued his job. But also Dr. Phosphorus has powers. Rick Flag does not.
Right.
You know, he's at the disadvantage. And the entire time, even when he's like getting burned and things like that, I felt like he never lost his cool. And it was such a like hardcore fight. While I'm watching it, I'm anxious for Rick Flag. I'm like going, ooh, every time like he's touched and I know it's burning. And I was like, Rick Flag Sr. may actually win this one.
Yeah, but that's the kind of thing that you need animation to do.
Yeah,
like you can't see that would never work in a live action the same way.
When that sizzle off the bird,
when
he was like grabbing his hand, I was like, oh no, every time.
But even like my favorite fight scene, and it was really a montage, was in episode 2, The Bride and Frankenstein.
Right?
That just like follows them throughout the years. I thought that was incredible.
It was like a motion comic.
Yeah.
Do you know what a motion comic
No, I don't know what a motion comic. I said yes. Like,
you're like,
yeah,
yes, I love it. No, a motion comic is like taking panels from a comic book and kind of layering it and doing some voiceover. So it's like you're watching it. I love motion comics. And even when I'm reading comics on my own, I like to read it on the app because I can go picture to picture. And so it's like watching things almost animated. And I felt like that where this frame was the same, but they were fighting in different areas. And so we got to see them through the years, her run for like a century.
Yeah. You know, those are characters that I knew way from outside of DC. Obviously, Frankenstein's monster was introduced by Mary Shelley in her novel, and then I think became kind of American pop culture figures. But, you know, they're just monsters and they're not characters, really. So I think that this was really interesting to, like, give them a fully fleshed storyline where you recognize, like, why they hate each other.
Yeah.
I mean, he stalks her for centuries.
Do they hate each other? She hates him.
She definitely hates him.
But I don't think he hates her.
He's in love with her. I mean, it's a symbiotic. Well, it's a symbiotic relationship. He thinks he is. He's told he is. And I think that, like,
Yeah, because my man was on a yacht.
Been...
He wasn't even thinking about her, right? He was on a yacht. I was like, why are you terrorizing this woman?
Right.
And I think they did such a great job of showing the difference between those two fights, right? Like when we watched Dr. Phosphorus fight Rick Flag Sr., that fight felt like, I don't know, two brothers kind of hashing it out.
Yeah, it was like very macho.
Yeah, like let's clear the air. And even when they were done, right? Rick Flag was like, stop playing. You know what I mean? Like he was like, we're over, this is done. But when we were watching the bride fight Frankenstein, there's a fear there, right? She's being chased.
Yeah, pursued,
She's being stalked and chased. And even that fight scene, they're not fighting. She's running and trying to stop him from chasing. And that's how you add in character development, like how you color in who these characters are. And I'd love that balance of the two of them.
I also think it's important, like you mentioned, the fighting style shows who they are as people. Like Phosphorus could have killed Rick Flag immediately. Like he's radiating pure energy. He could phase through if he wanted to. So the showing of restraint in these monsters, and that humanizes them in their own way. And even the formatting, which I touched on a little before, but it being something that is kicking off a universe. That first episode is so different tonally from that second episode, and it makes me wonder how much each episode is going to feel like an individual comic, where we get the introduction to everyone, we know we want to like them, but how do we like them? And then you unravel them each episode as you go, and when you finish a graphic novel, there's a sense of that family, there's that sense of community, there's that sense of team, but we've never really seen it with monsters, because they are not meant to be in one contained thing. They are inherently violent at each other. So I think it's a really interesting swing to put us together into and throw us into the deep end with one human eyeline. Like just Rick Flag is our identifier. The rest, monsters.
I mean, I think television, just like the narrative storytelling element of it, episodic television especially, like it's very much like the comic storytelling process, I think.
So as like a fancy cinema guy, how does this compare? Like watching this animation, did you feel like you were watching, I don't know, like Casablanca or something? Like were you like,
it's a little different than Casablanca for sure, but a little less colorful, a little more colorful.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I think I can see a lot of like reference points. I think that like this idea of like, as I said, like getting a team together, like a misfit group of people who have their own tensions and complications, they're going to butt heads no matter what. I mean, I think a lot of Westerns like Magnificent Seven, which is based on Seven Samurai, a Japanese film, which is about like a bunch of like cowboys basically, or samurai from the original, who are kind of given a task by this town to come basically save them, to like protect them from this like group of villains, which I think is kind of, Seven Samurai is kind of like the narrative like acorn, I think, where you can find that kind of grows into a tree, where Creature Commandos is on the branch somewhere. But even like, Freaks, the Todd Browning movie, which is about like basically sideshow freaks at a circus. We would probably use different names to describe them today if that movie were coming out, but that's about like interlopers, like two like con people trying to like take advantage of, I think, like one of the little people who are part of the circus, and like all of them band together to take revenge. So I think that like that, I think that that's a beautiful thing when, I mean, it's kind of scary at the same time, but like I think that's what make people relate to these type of stories, where you have so many different characters who can represent so many different things.
Yeah, I agree. And I think this is a perfect gateway for someone who wants to be in, or who's interested in animation. Because like growing up, I'm a 90s baby. Anime, which is Japanese animation, was always like put on this pedestal as like something that adults can enjoy.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of animes that are very adult. And I love that we're starting to explore that side here with American animation. And I think Creature Commandos is that perfect sweet spot where we have these adult themes, adult language, and it just feels cinematic on the way that anime is. Like there's an anime called Akira, and there are so many films that are based on scenes in
Absolutely.
Akira.
I mean, it's kind of like a storyboard at this point.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, and I think also, like, I think what sets this apart from a lot of animation we see is that just the movement is so big and bold and beautiful, and it doesn't feel like I'm watching like a static panel that someone's just kind of like walking across, you know?
Absolutely. And there's a comedy to it too, which is another signature of James Gunn, where there's a serious fight going on. But because these are people, right? They're not humans, but they're people. They have these human moments where they make a mistake, something happens, and they're like, oh shit, right? Like the floor falling from beneath Dr. Fire, throwing fire all over a wood spot.
Yeah.
You think they'll charge him for that damage?
I feel like no one ever gets charged.
How do you build Dr. Phosphorus? Where do you send the check?
You build Amanda Waller and them, right?
Yeah, she has a budget. Like she's a special budget set aside.
Yeah,
There's an insurance policy.
I would definitely charge Rick Flag Sr., especially if like he declined me earlier. That invoice is coming, okay?
I also want to zoom out to the macro of animation in speaking of billing, but we're looking at a universe starting, right? So I think it's really interesting to use animation as the kickoff, going from comics into animation and knowing these characters are going to also be in live action. But we also see like a frame of like live action in the animation in the cell phone. There's like, I think it's Zac Efron. There's literally a frame of live action. So we know that this universe is going to be multimedia. We know we're getting live action. They just announced that they're going to be using puppetry and dynamic duo. So that movie, as far as I know, is puppetry, live action, CGI, and blending animation styles. So I think it's really interesting to start a universe in animation with just a sprinkle of live action. I'm curious if that continues, if other media gets involved. And I think the idea of like, when you look at a comic book, an inker can change how something looks and a different penciler can do a panel. I think it's going to be really interesting when we zoom out in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, the multimedia element of what the DCU becomes by starting in this adult animation and adding little other elements. What's the great tapestry? What's the quilt of the DCU going to be going from comics into all this other stuff? And how are we going to see media differently after this?
Yeah, it's such a creative and I want to say unprecedented way to attack, especially I think including video games is such an ambitious thing to do.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be so immersive, right? To be able to explore and see this world from so many different aspects.
Sounds like Creature Commandos gave you hope.
It gave me more than hope. I am a DC stan. I've grown up. I was born into this darkness, which is a DC reference,
I got you.
And it'll give you hope. But what I love that DC at its core and what Creature Commandos is at its core is looking into human behavior, human interactions, and then they add on to these things.
Right. So it's human first for you, superheroes,
everything else.
Magic.
Just like Christopher Reeve, Superman.
If you guys haven't seen it, watch Creature Commandos. I'm sure we spoiled a little bit for you, but
even I recommend it.
Yeah, even you recommend it. And this is the fanciest guy I know, okay? But today we got a lot going on. We're going to talk about episode 3 and 4 of Creature Commandos. You guys both watched it?
Yeah,
sweet.
Of course.
We're going to have a look back at The Penguin.
Yeah.
So excited. It's one of my favorite shows that is out right now. And it's the holidays. So we're going to talk about our favorite holiday stuff. I love the holidays. I don't like the cold, but I like to be cozy.
Okay.
Are you a holiday person?
Yeah, by a fire.
I
live
like
in New York City.
I have a Batman Snuggie that has little ears on it.
Okay.
But DC should send me a blanket. I agree. Let's get that going, you know? But yeah, let's get started.
Let's kick it off.
I'm excited.
The world of Creature Commandos. We got episode 3 and 4. I'm like, this stuff gets me amped. You know what I mean?
Now, how do I know? Well, let's just say the proof is in the pudding. And the pudding, ladies and gentlemen, is my next guest, G.I. Robot.
Why am I pudding?
A lot of things happened in these 2 episodes. Yeah. We got the origins of G.I. Robot.
Yeah.
Circe, I always want to say Circe, but Circe got apprehended finally. And I don't want to say died, but because I don't know if he's sentient or not, we'll talk about it. But G.I. Robot is killed in battle, and Weasel gets to be the hero.
And then we launch into Weasel's origin story too, episode 4. I'm going to say something that's already controversial because I know you two and what's going to come up with Coy. Episode 3 is my favorite.
Episode 3 is your favorite?
Whoa, okay. I really like that. I liked G.I. Robot a lot.
Can I tell you?
Yeah.
Me too.
Oh, wow.
So it's just Coy.
I'll be over here talking about Ford in a few minutes.
Talk about Ford. We'll get to that. Yeah.
No,
I loved G.I. Robot. I thought it was really fun. I mean, it's hard to say that that's subject matter that's fun, but it was really fun. I love the idea of a character who's sort of like stuck in one place while everyone around them is still like moving along as history and time evolves. Frankenstein's sort of the same way. Yeah. But I feel like G.I. Robot, because, he's literally a robot. He's like been programmed to do one thing, and that's what he does really well. So much so that it becomes like comedy. Yeah. Which like that's what I love about like TV comedy. I think like playing on a character's like deep inner characteristics that just never change.
I agree. And what I loved about G.I. Robot and Sean Gunn's performance is I felt like there was so much nuance in his like monotone, consistent tone. Yeah. And I was honestly amazed. I love that they put clothes on him and then took it off. No. I mean,
he's not really naked.
No, it's not that. I love that. When he was a soldier, he had a uniform on. Yes. And so immediately they made us bond with this robot because, he had on the cute little clothes and he looked like a toothpick in them.
He looked handsome in a soldier suit.
I agree. Yeah. And I feel like that was very important, especially during like World War II, where it's like, how do you look and, making sure that the people at home can see what we have.
I mean, it's very patriotic.
Yes.
Like, and I think that he represents like that specific era and time too.
Yeah.
Like when like everyone was rallying behind this one kind of like shared objective, which is like kind of win this war and like kind of reset everything. No, I thought he was really fun, and like a fish out of water I think is always a fun storyline. So like again, like someone who's kind of stuck in this perpetual like World War II era that never changes for him. And sometimes history repeats itself, and it's nice that G.I. Robot comes back to save the day.
Was very consistent. Yeah. And that was kind of my point. Like, initially they have him in a suit, and then when they decommission him, they take his clothes off. And the first thing that guy does to connect with him is put him in clothes again. Right. And I think that's such a humanizing thing, and we'll get to Weasel. I think that's another reason why Weasel is so disturbing, is because he has like these humanoid, features, his height, the way he stands, but he's butt-ass naked. And so, like, to put him in clothing, like, kind of humanizes them.
Yeah, that's true. I feel like Weasel would be a very different character if he was wearing pants.
I think so, too. Like, if he had on clothing,
like Dobby the house elf, he got his sock. Like, Dobby got his clothes. And it's humanizing.
What I love, and I have a question for the two of you.
Okay.
They mentioned it after he does that presentation where he receives the award, that he has some semblance of, I don't know, AI, of intelligence, of artificial intelligence. And when he scans the audience and he's like, are any of you Nazis? And he's like, that's exactly what a Nazi would say.
When everyone's like, no,
Yeah, everyone's like, ooh, we need to decommission him. I took it as a joke, right? Because after the guy who like was working on him or brought him there was like, people don't appreciate his sense of humor.
Right,
and I took it as like he was joking. He had been around guys who joked around all the time, and he took on what dark humor was and was like, let me do it with this audience to loosen them up. And even like we see moments of
crowd work
and it just didn't land.
I personally took it as a threat, and the humor came from us seeing the threat as funny because we're nervous.
I
like
agree.
Like it's like like when you nervous laugh at like like I think he was serious, but it is a joke in the show. It's just the robot wasn't joking. The joke was, oh no, what's gonna happen? Is how I read it.
Have you checked all these people's identification cards?
No, we haven't done that. Why would we have done that, G.I.?
To see if there are any known Nazis. If so, they will be dispatched of in short order.
I agree. I think I think the inherent humor of him is that he is stuck.
I feel like he had goals, and there was something there. Like
the AI was brought up as something evolving that we couldn't quite pin down. I see what you're saying.
Right. Even in that final battle where he's fighting, and I don't know if he's dead or not.
Right.
Because do we say? Because then we can't say he's dead if we don't think he has feelings, right?
Yeah,
I feel
he's
like
not human. Yeah.
Right. Then he just broke. Right?
He's broken.
He's broken.
Yeah.
But even during that time, I felt like he was I felt like he was like finding purpose.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like he was like, I
his
just
way.
like killing Nazis.
Yeah.
That's just what I'm here to do.
Yeah.
Now, there was a very cool character.
There's two characters I got to talk about. The first of which is huge. In my opinion, Sergeant Rock is a formative part of the original era of comic books in general. Sergeant Rock was one of the first, like, comics come from a place of escapism and telling important stories and getting the word out there. And in wartime, comics are usually like a huge way that's approachable financially. Like they're intentionally like the idea of pulp comics and the idea of like getting the word out. Oftentimes you deliver comic books to people overseas at war. Sergeant Rock is a huge character for that era of comic books, which kicked everything off. Sergeant Rock is in this episode in that platoon. And then also this guy named William Magnus, I believe his name is Dr. Magnus. Invented the Metal Men, and the Metal Men are, I think, going to be important later on. So we get both of those OG characters from DC, like legacy, in one flashback, and I love that world building for the greater DCU.
You getting the hang of this, Tin Man?
Most certainly, sir.
Good. Me and Easy been through this more than a few times. Just follow our lead.
The big fight of this episode, because there's always a big fight.
There's always a fight.
Is the full team of the Creature Commandos versus Circe. I love saying it that way. I'm sorry. But I think that it's such a great way to scale. We were talking about power scaling.
Power scaling, yeah.
And you see that Circe is like nothing to fuck with, right? Like all of the Creature Commandos have to come together and jump her.
Yeah.
And I love watching a team jump somebody. You know, like... Why are we...
When they deserve it.
When they deserve it, but also
not like just on the street.
What is honor
shopping.
when we're protecting the world? You know, like why are we trying to be honorable when the world is at stake?
Right.
Let's go ahead and jump her. You know, let's go all in. And I cannot get enough of the fight style, the fight choreography, and the sound design in every single fight. I'm like, I don't know. I feel like I'm watching real people squabble.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
It just happened to be out like radioactive as well.
Right.
Or with gills on there.
So we're like at Area 51 and they're squabbling there. This is fine. This is fine. But let's get into episode 4.
Yeah. Which I know, Coy, I mean, you're like...
Giddy. Look at it. Look at him. Look at
I think it's one of the best episodes in comic book adaptations.
That's nuts.
I consider The Penguin one of the best comic book adaptations in long form ever. And I consider episode 4 one of the best singular episodes in comic book TV.
My brother in Christ, have you seen Batman Cape Crusader?
Oh, we're going to talk about
X-Men
Batman.
97.
We got Christmas stuff to talk about. Worry not. Batman will be discussed.
Let's go over this.
You want to talk about it fair enough,
the episode.
Fair enough,
and then we'll get into why it is the greatest of all time.
I'm like a Hot Wheel car winding up. I'm ready. I'm ready.
So we got the Weasel origins this episode. Now that we effectively jumped Circe, she's been apprehended, and they're questioning her, and we get a blossoming friendship between Rick Flag Sr. and Frankenstein. It's funny. So let's just get it out the way. Let's talk about why this is the best episode of animation.
You looking over here like, is he just gonna go? Is he gonna happen?
I just see Coy's like,
okay. I'm like, thank God he's on the other side of the room because he
the energy. I'm Dr. Phosphorus. I'm radiating with glee.
Yeah, because we both think Three
was our favorite.
Yeah, it's our favorite out of the two. But you're saying this is not just better of the two; it's the best of all time. This is the
I'm saying it's in the conversation for best episode of adapted content for a few reasons. Okay, so comic books to me are comedy and tragedy, just like any, theatrical art form. And the thing that makes comics different is the Trojan horse of morality and ethics within this elevated system. So you use characters like Batman and Superman and Wonder Woman to tell stories, but they've got this shine to them. They have this extravagance. Creature Commandos is doing that at a 10 here because it's giving us drama with Weasel's terrifying story, and it's so powerful, so emotional without him being able to speak. That's so elevated. It's also world building because it ties into the Suicide Squad, and I'd be fascinated to know just how much that origin was written when they said he killed kids in the Suicide Squad. So it recontextualizes, it world builds between live action and animation, and it broaches into comic books because Weasel's there. So this changes everything. That's 1/3. Second third, comedy. The comedy between Frankenstein and Rick Flag Sr. is second to none. fun because it shows the laissez-faire attitude of Rick Flag in that this is another day at the office. It gives us so much world building around Frankenstein that he sees everything at an 11. He sees, are we best friends? Versus, she loves you. Versus, I have to kill you because I'm jealous. He never knows anything but, like, you know, My Chemical Romance level emotion.
The bride and I have nothing going on between us. She's not my type, and I'm not hers. Okay?
She's everyone's type. So are you.
Well, thank you, but no.
And I love that all of that comes through this relationship. So drama and comedy, now we have the comedy between the two of them. So we've got that already settled. And then Easter eggs. The reason comic book content, I think, connects us so much is there's a feeling of, I got that reference. There's a feeling of, like, community. There's a feeling of, I've invested personally, me, Coy, I've been reading comics since I was 2, so I've got 30 plus years of love and passion. So the moment I can see a flash forward of the first canon appearance of Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, alongside the Titans, alongside Peacemaker, alongside Vigilante, I get to see Starfire and Robin and Superman all at once in an episode that has drama, that has comedy. This is what comic book can be. This is what TV can be. This is what storytelling can be. It is perfect TV.
There you go. Now everyone's happy, right? Except for you, because you no longer have food. And you're ugly.
You did not convince me.
Wow, damn.
Did it convince you?
I mean, I can easily convince. The most recent thing that someone tells me, I'm like, that
sounds good.
Seems like
you know,
fact.
it's because you're not burdened with the knowledge of like
the 30 years of
the 30 years of
hanging on my back,
TV knowledge.
And
I just think it's a testament to like how good animation is getting, and I think that's what you should get from everything he's saying.
Okay,
I think it's how does art touch you and your specific experience, and I think Coy specifically, because of everything he's read and he loves, this is good.
Well, I mean, I see, like, you know, I think that Weasel is like, because he's an animal.
Yeah.
And, you know, like, there's already, like, you know, I think we see him not as this monster. He's like a little,
dog.
A dog. A little rough around the edges, obviously. Hasn't been trained. Licks himself too much, maybe. But
stinks. We
know he stinks.
He
We're
definitely
certain
stinks.
that he stinks. But he also is a lawyer.
I love that he has a human rights lawyer.
A human from the Innocence Project is coming in and being like, no, not my Weasel.
You're not talking about John that way.
I'm not going to hold you, though. I was like, I feel like the Innocence Project has like bigger fish to fry. Like, I was like, immediately I went straight to like, is he human enough?
It's everyone's on the same level. You know what I mean?
I did very much love the idea. I'm a big girl on like themes and allegories, and I love looking at something that can allude to people just misjudging you because of the way that you look. Particularly the police, right? We see the police come in there, and because of the way that Weasel looks, they're so quick to fire.
Yeah.
They're so quick to like be like, he's dangerous to these children.
Also, he's not a dog. You know,
he's not a dog.
I love the parallel, and maybe I'm misreading or reading too much into it, Tyler, but I love that we have a story with Frankenstein, and it's Eric Frankenstein, but the Frankenstein myth happens to Weasel. The people, like the fire being started, the misinterpreted monster. We literally have an allegory within the episode itself. One of the best of all time.
I wonder what he's dreaming about.
Probably just chasing squirrels.
Sean Gunn voices both G.I. Robot and Weasel. So like back-to-back 2 great episodes where he gets to do something so completely different.
Yeah.
But both these characters are like, it's a nature versus nurture thing. Like how do, you know, where, you know, dogs... Animals can be taught things, but like also their instincts take over. So like I think that that's kind of an interesting element to it.
I agree. And finally, we get a big thing in this episode, which is Circe's vision.
Yes.
And we get a lot of Easter eggs in it. I was kind of surprised that immediately Amanda Waller was like,
"Yep,
man,
right.
This is it. Do you believe that vision is real?"
I don't know. I mean, I guess I didn't really think about it that way. I mean, to me, it's just like, I mean, I think once again, the last thing I've heard is what I believe. So if that happened to me, I'd be like, oh shit,
right?
Yeah, I mean,
but she's a liar, so it's like someone who's a liar and who was like just fighting you and your homies said, actually, I was fighting you and your homies for the fate of the world. Right. I would be like, Cap.
Also, like, it's pretty overwhelming to have someone like
like
give
go
a
into your
premonition
mind.
at that level. Yeah.
But I would posit that Amanda Waller particularly is a great person to be like, hey, superheroes are going to kill us all.
Yeah.
Because like what better weakness for Amanda Waller than like that thing I've always feared. So you're giving the person who's afraid of that very thing a vision of it. So that's why I'm like, I don't know what to trust because Amanda Waller's the exact person to tell that to.
I agree. Like it's just her bias.
So wait, so what are the Easter eggs in this vision? Because
I mean, first canon appearance.
Right over my head.
For
Batman. Superman with the new sigil. It's the first time we've seen it in the DCU. We get our first appearance of Batman and Wonder Woman in silhouette. We get Starfire in the background. We get, I believe, one of the Robins looked like a little tinge of yellow under his cape. We get Vigilante from Peacemaker. He appears, and Peacemaker is also in that rollout. So it's the first time we've seen in the new DCU these characters, but something big enough for the Titans and the Justice League conceptually to team up with Peacemaker and Vigilante.
So we don't know, but it's all
just a little bit.
And Starfire.
It's all just
I guess I have to
a
rewatch
vision.
this. Yeah.
We don't know if they'll ever show up. They may not, and that's why they were very vague.
Right, but it's still
it leaves
like
us room.
it shows the world. that
Endless
exists.
possibilities.
Yeah,
I agree.
If the need comes up for this type of group again, I hope you'll be a part.
I didn't realize I had a choice.
Now that you're up to date, we got to talk about Creature Commandos.
Yeah.
So we just got up to episode 5 and 6.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
How did you feel about it?
I love Frankenstein kind of generally on this show. He's not the Frankenstein I know personally.
Okay.
First of all, I am kind of curious how Frankenstein...
Like the origins of Frankenstein?
Yeah, how did Frankenstein get into DC?
So Frankenstein is a canonical DC comic character, and in the comics, Frankenstein is much more of a traditional hero, and he's actually even got like a catchphrase, like he emerges and is like, is something undone? And he basically has this like, I must complete something. He's always trying to finish the cycle, but he's more altruistic in a monster way. But Eric Frankenstein, this is the first appearance of Eric Frankenstein. Like there's never been this version of the character ever. Does that make sense?
So Frankenstein famously is the scientist.
Exactly.
So this is Eric.
Which I think is the joke. Because we always say, like, it's not the monster, it's Frankenstein's monster.
It's Frankenstein's
Here,
monster.
he's neither. He's Eric.
He's Eric.
Oh, sure.
He's Eric Frankenstein. But I think it's funny that you're saying that he's normally a hero because here he's quite literally a villain. Like he's terrible.
When he's a leader in the comic book. So I think it's a good distinction to have him called Eric to really separate altogether that it's not the Frankenstein that you know, and it's not even the Frankenstein from the comic books. Because like Frankenstein Agent of Shade, which is the run I'd recommend, it's the closest to it. It's written by Jeff Lemire. That's still going to be a more leader kind of like rallying his troops, going to take him into battle. Frankenstein, which is not this guy.
This Frankenstein, I don't even think is a leader, right?
No.
Right? Even in this episode where he's interacting with Rick, I felt like Rick was taking the lead.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's sort of like kind of low-key teaching Frankenstein about the world and consent. And
consent is a big thing.
Sexy. But I mean, I think that's also where the humor. I mean, I think that's why he's like it's complicated character because a lot of the humor comes from the fact that he just like doesn't understand social cues.
And also the voice acting made
David Harbour.
Every delivery, I was like, I kind of like this guy. But I love that in the script, James Gunn made sure that maybe he knew how lovable David Harbour would be. I'm not quite sure, but he made sure that even if we started to like him in his relationship with Rick, that we remembered he's terrible. Right. Like I don't know.
Like what is the biggest indicator for you?
That he was terrible?
Yeah.
I think when they showed him kind of meeting that older woman and her like opening up her home and bringing him in and then him killing her.
Yeah.
I feel like that was like, oh yeah, this guy is there.
That's pretty shitty thing to do.
Yeah, there's a reminder. And this is after we saw him stalk the bride for a couple episodes. So I was like, he's not
But
that
there
great.
is a nature versus nurture conversation to be had, I think, about Frankenstein too, because like he was made to be this person, like literally made.
The bride was also made by the same man, and she's chilling.
There's an interesting way that he's being portrayed here where he's always at an 11. Like all of his emotions are like, you're my best friend. Like there's no building of an arc of emotion. It's either like we hate each other, we love each other. And I think that's really fascinating that like there's a snap between emotion. He loves so passionately, he hates so passionately, he has to solve this problem. So I think there's also a conversation of like intelligence in the verbosity of his speech versus emotional intelligence, which is none. And I think it's a really fun character to play because he's so verbose and he's got this great vernacular and he's so capable. But then when it comes to actually socializing or being around anyone else, it's like, I kill or love you. And that's so cool as a character that's clearly the antagonist in this use.
And then I think that's why his relationship with Rick was so interesting because he came in here with a hard press, right? Like he was ready to kill Rick over another girl. And I think that that's interesting that Rick almost died over Princess Ilana with Frankenstein, because that's also his motivations to investigate that professor and Circe.
Well, you mentioned Clayface.
Yes.
Who I didn't know.
You didn't know Clayface.
I didn't know. Shocker. Surprise. Another character I didn't know.
I thought he might have been big enough in the cultural zeitgeist that you would have had some exposure.
I could see him not.
Yeah.
You'd like him. He's an actor.
Okay.
He's an actor. And he's a shapeshifter.
Yeah.
His origins shift. But I think what's important with that Clayface reveal was that Circe and the person who validated her claim was not who she said she was. She was an impersonator. My question is, did Rick Flag kind of come up on that because he didn't trust Circe or because he got the buns earlier?
I'm going the latter. I feel
go
like
for the
he's
buns.
got, yeah.
He's like, you can't clap my girl. I just slept with her.
He loves her. Like he is clouded.
I would think that a man of his looks and stature would take more to like get whipped. I was
episode
shocked.
1, the looks of Frank Grillo's Rick Flag have been a through line of like, the way the man looks.
Yeah. I think that it's important because why would they draw him like that?
Right.
If they didn't want us to like harp on it.
He's not good looking. He's just drawn that way.
He's just, I mean, also Frank Grillo
and he knows what he's
built
playing.
that way, yeah.
But they have a really brutal fight, Clayface and Rick Flag Sr. And again, the fight choreography, the sound design in these episodes are insane.
And I want to speak on 2 things in that fight. The first being the actual moment we see the human element of Rick Flag being a man amongst monsters.
Yeah.
We are pretty used to in comic book movies everyone being superpowered or even the humans being like superpowered. I love that there's actually a devastating, like, we don't know how this goes from here because of fighting a metahuman. This guy's a trained military, he's strong, he's yoked, he's handsome. But if you fight a Clayface, there's going to be consequences, which I like that they showed early on, like in the DC universe, that there's already, like, humans should not be dabbling with monsters. Right. And I also really think it's interesting that we've seen another example of mixed media. That Xbox screen was an Xbox screen. We literally saw a video game in an animated show, and now we've seen live action, we've seen Zac Efron on the phone, we've seen a lot of different media in this, and I keep thinking about this kicking off the DCU. We know later on we get live action. We know we see Frank Grillo in live action. We also know later on we get CGI and puppets and all these things. I'm really curious when you look out at the DC universe, is it going to feel like mixed media all the time? Are we going to see animation in a live action movie? Are we going to see animated characters mixing into video games? Like, this is kind of an unprecedented intermingling of medias. And the fact that Xbox was pure Xbox is pretty unique.
Yeah. But let's move on to episode 6 because there was a lot that happened in it as well.
Yeah.
This was the first origin story episode we got where I was like, yeah, he deserves to be in that bunker that they had him in.
Dr. Phosphorus, you mean.
Dr. Phosphorus, yes. So we get his backstory, we learn. And I think next to the Weasel episode, this was one that really impacted me emotionally, where I was like, whoa, they are going hard with these storylines.
Yeah.
What did you think about it?
No, I mean, he's someone I didn't really know much about until this show. So again, like all my information I'm getting along with you.
So he's a Batman villain traditionally.
Right.
And I was wondering if you still felt connected to him before, like, because I feel like the writing is so strong even before his flashback, but I can't unknow my Batman connection.
Yeah. Right.
Was it a character that was captivating to you without context?
Yeah, I mean, I just like the look of him. And again, like we've talked about this, Alan Tudyk is like,
he's
so good.
Yeah.
So like, I think that like, I've just been taken by just the visuals of the show and like how he presents himself. I think it's just like a really just the design is really impressive to me.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think something about that fight that he had with Rick Flag Sr. in the premiere kind of endeared me because I felt like I was watching siblings fight. And so when I saw that he was actually a villain, and it wasn't like he was a villain where I was like he was getting revenge or something. Well, he was, but I don't know. He was pretty terrible.
The way they use his power is so differently violent. The show's so violent, but it's fascinating that in a show of hyperviolence, there are moments where you're like, oh, too much. And like him phasing through stuff and just brutally mutilating things, even a hyperviolent world feels like a lot. And I really like that in this episode, his flashback, the transitions were this incredibly painful juxtaposition of the joy of being a father versus the violence of being a crime boss. And he basically went from like what he found joy in, love, to what he found joy in, hate and money. It was such a really, like, the swings were so aggressive. This was one of my favorite transitions where they would cut between like him in that pimp suit twirling around and then him playing with his kid. Like, you felt all of that. And to me, this episode, like you said, this guy is a villain through and through, but you feel so much that, like, he murdered that mafia guy's kids. How do you forgive that? But then Alan Tudyk makes him likable. It's such a great morality gray.
And I think that's the whole thing. They're all a little bit morally gray.
Right.
And I think it's lightened up by us seeing the blossoming friendship between Nina and the bride.
Yeah.
They've been kind of coupled up this entire season. And I really like knowing that the bride is I don't want to call her a victim, but, you know, she's been stalked and she's been running for a long time. And to see her interact with Nina, who's like inherently good.
Yeah.
Try to soften her up.
I mean, even just like calm her down.
Yeah, calm her down.
Just like keep her in one place and like not like feel like she's always on the run.
She's grounding too. I when I was watching Nina, I thought of you, Tyler. I was like, Nina's our Tyler.
Oh.
Like they're doing all these superhero things and these like they're interacting with this like fantastical world, and Nina is just sitting there in a very polite way saying like, what the fuck is going on? How could you just like fight someone or murder someone? And I think she's there to check the bride. And I love when they go into the brothel because the bride is someone who's experienced trauma and domestic violence, and her first instinct is to be violent to these women who are in the brothel.
Oh my God, you're crazy. You're always so hyperbolically violent. You need therapy.
I was glad they checked her. They was like, girl.
It's this learned behavior because,
they read her.
It's the patriarchy. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's bad.
Why you bring that here to our space? I don't understand. And I loved her. I really loved seeing that. And I love that fight scene that they had.
Yeah.
In the brothel. Coy, what did you think?
I think the show's done a really good job of humanizing everyone episode to episode, even beyond what you think you could feel for them. And I feel like their bond is kind of an anchor point for us. We've got Rick Flag as the human element that anchors us as an eye line, but their friendship is what's kind of humanizing them as monsters that can show love, because the bride's so reluctant to show love. And I feel like that's so human. Like when you don't want to like someone, you're like, no, they're not getting to me. They're not breaking under my skin. I love that the bride is our most stoic and Nina's finding her way to like humanize the bride and make her open up and make her available. And I really think that pairing is kind of the opposite of Dr. Phosphorus. The Dr. Phosphorus character, he becomes a shell that's radiating out energy that doesn't let anyone in. And then we're seeing that crack in the bride through Nina. And I think the episode was paired very intentionally because I said at the beginning, the graphic novel feel of opening with the team, and then each episode we get to dive deeper into these characters. This feels like an issue that is his flashback, but it really has us uncover a lot about the bride while we're doing it.
Softy.
It's because I was saving you again, idiot.
Because you are, my friend.
Get over yourself, fish.
Yeah, I agree. And this is actually Batman's first appearance in the DCU.
Oh.
This is the DCU.
Alive. We briefly saw him on a skewer in episode 4.
In episode 1. I love that reference. You're right. I love that reference that we saw in the Dr. Phosphorus flashback when he got...
I was so happy to see the cape and just like, oh, it's Batman. 'Cause that's how Batman feels. He's everywhere.
I feel like we can dive just a little bit deeper into this episode. So we have a special guest here today, Sean Gunn. Okay. He's an actor. He played Weasel in the live-action Suicide Squad, and he's also playing it in Creature Commandos, and he's also playing G.I. Robot. So let's bring him out here.
Come on.
Hi, everybody.
Hi,
Hello,
welcome. Thanks for
welcome.
coming.
Thanks for having me. This is very cool.
Well, we've watched Creature Commandos, and we were like, we have to get shot in. You obviously have, at least for me, it's obvious to me, you have fan favorites.
I have twice the roles. That's for sure. But I love both these characters. I love both Weasel and G.I. Robot, and obviously, Weasel had been with me for a little while because I played Weasel in the Suicide Squad. It's not a different version; it's the same version, but it's like it's kind of a 180 from what we experienced with Weasel in that movie. So it's been great, and I love G.I. Robot, love playing him. So
Did you know about the Creature Commandos before the show dropped?
no, I never know about stuff like that. I first heard of them when my brother James told me about it and said, and it was something he was really excited about. He's like, I got this really cool thing, and we're going to be really funny. But it almost seemed like an afterthought a little bit when he was first describing it, and then he sent me the scripts, and I was just blown away. I was like, I've read a vast majority of things that my brother's written, certainly everything that's been produced, but I was like, this might be my favorite thing James has written. And sincerely, I love it. And he seems to agree. So it's, it's cool. It's
You're
been
in
a great
company. I mean, do you go back to like the comics, the source material to learn about these characters, or you kind of rely on James's writing?
I rely. We all on this show, we really rely heavily on what James is going for, because he's so fastidious about every single thing that he wants. So with these characters, I went back. The Weasel comic book references are not really relevant to the Weasel that we're portraying in this DC universe. It's funny, but it's not. In the comic books, Weasel's just like a dude who's like it's really bizarre. And this Weasel is not that. G.I. Robot, I look back for visual reference on what he looked like, and I did a little bit of digging through some of the comics that he was in, but it's always more relevant to me to talk to James, and sort of he'll tell me what I should look at and what direction I should be going. And really for G.I. Robot, he's so self-explanatory that it was kind of, he's got this one primary focus, which for an actor it's wonderful to just have, like, hey, your
motivation.
Yeah, what's your motivation? You only have one.
Exactly.
And so it was really just kind of about finding the voice and finding where the voice lives in my body, so that I could, so that then I can play within that range.
This is a debate we all had about G.I. Robot. Does he have a sense of humor? Like, does he have personality?
Here's what I love about G.I. Robot, all right, is that he is a robot, right? So we associate an actual robot, an actual automaton is not. He's programmed with only responses, so there's nothing in there. But when we flash back to his story and we see him with his friends in Easy Company, and that's why Cheers to the Tin Man is so important, is that when they toast him and he's there and they kind of close up on him, it's like it feels good to him. For me playing the character, it's fun to imagine that it was like unsettling to feel something.
Right.
To be like, oh, I didn't know. So it's almost like he's not quite Pinocchio. He's not turned into a human. He's not there yet. But it's like there's a couple of drops in there of, like, there's something on the road to humanity inside of him. And playing with that as the end margin of the envelope that I'm working in, to me is like really super exciting.
When you said that's what a Nazi would say at the end, I was like, that's a joke. But you're saying it's just his programming, yeah?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think he's intentionally funny, but maybe there's a little wiggle room there in terms of being enjoying himself.
Right.
Like, he understands that things feel good. So there's something in there, because taking out Nazis is actually is another thing. It's just like, it's his motivation, but it also kind of like, ooh, kind of feels right. You know?
Yeah.
It's satisfying for him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are these Nazis, General?
Yeah, GI. These are Nazis.
Oh.
Obviously, you're playing two characters, but they're both non-human characters. One's basically nonverbal. But I'm very curious, we're not seeing you, but how does even acting as a voice actor, how does the physicality play a role in figuring out who those people are?
Need to make sure my voice is warmed up and that my body is capable of doing everything that it needs to do to create the sounds. With Weasel, it was particularly challenging for this stuff because when we did Weasel's episode, Chasing Squirrels, that whole sequence in the last 5 minutes or whatever of the episode, we tried to do that a couple times all in one long take, so that I was kind of experiencing it and doing all of the sounds and everything all at once, which really took it out of me. It's like it's hard to maintain that kind of emotional connection to something without having any words to cling on to. Doing it all from somewhere in my chest and in my head, and it was interesting. But when I'm in the booth, I tend to rock back and forth a lot and stay active and move into things and stuff like that. But it's wild.
Weasel's flashbacks, one of the most gut-wrenching experiences I've had in any medium of any superhero comic adaptation. It really wrecked me existentially. And you and I once spoke about how full Weasel's story was, but it was like a year ago at a MegaCon. You told me Weasel's story is very full and you were excited. How long has that flashback been seed planted? Did you know that was his origin back in the Suicide Squad? How long has this tapestry been woven?
If I'm remembering correctly, I knew when we were shooting Suicide Squad that Weasel had not actually killed all those children. So I knew that when they were describing that about him, that it was false. I didn't know the entirety of the backstory, I don't think, till maybe shortly after we shot. I feel like when James first talked to me about Creature Commandos, he definitely told me by then what the whole story was of Weasel's backstory, and it's so heartbreaking. But the other thing James and I talked a lot about with Weasel is that Weasel is like a dog, right? He's he's big and he's human sized and he's strong, but he really is just like a big dog. And for people who have and love dogs, you know very well that dogs have a full range of, emotions. They feel fear and they get joyful and they get depressed and they get all of the things that that humans experience, maybe to a lesser degree. Weasel, it's just like I have a smaller set of tools in my toolkit, but I'm still doing the job of trying to convey something truthful about what this character is feeling and what's going on, which is really a trip.
Yeah. Are those limitations exciting? Like the challenge of that?
Yeah, it's hard. When I first talked to James about doing Creature Commandos, I was a little bit like, because I thought it might just be Weasel, and I was a little like, ugh. It's just a lot of grunting and whining and wailing and you'd never know it, but I'm like a Shakespearean trained actor, so I'm like not even just one word,
You feel the Shakespeare in Weasel.
Yeah, I hope so.
I mean, which character would you compare Weasel to in the Shakespeare canon?
Shakespeare? Oh my
yeah.
Lord. Oh my God, I don't know. Probably somebody like Puck or something like that.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
So at first I was kind of like, I don't know. And then he very quickly was like, there's another role I also want you to play. And he speaks. And I'm like, yes, great. And he speaks. It's awesome. Still be CGI if he was live action, but that's okay. That's a story for another day.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, well, this should be cool. It's a robot and a weasel. But then again, I read the scripts and I was so all in. I was like, oh, I'll do whatever it takes to make this project work.
When G.I. Robot do we say died or destroyed? Was destroyed?
I mean, that's the debate that we keep having.
To me, I felt G.I. Robot. Like, I wanted to be friends with him. Like, he didn't just need Nina. He could also have Frankie. You know what I mean? But when he was destroyed, I was so sad. So you were able to emote and make us fall in love with it.
G.I.
Friend Nina, we fought Nazis together, you and I.
Yes.
It is... Oh, what a beautiful day. Cheers for the timber.
Well, thank you. I as I said, I love G.I. Robot. I'll let you decide what his fate there is. I won't comment too much on that. But when I started working on the character, I was kind of like, I don't want to be a typical robot. I didn't want to imitate any other robots that I'd seen or heard, and I just tried to think like, okay, so this inventor is programming him back at the time. What is he going to use as his template for the voice? And I started listening to old newsreels, like news on the march kind of things, and hello in 1944, and just listening to that and then finding where that lived in my body. And then I don't have to, I'm not imitating anymore. I just I just have to do my own version of it. And then from then on, I just need to find where it lives in my vocal range, basically.
What was your inspiration for the Weasel sounds then?
Watching Weasels on YouTube. and again,
deep research.
It's the same type of thing. Nobody's ever going to be like, that's not really what Weasels sound like.
You'd be surprised.
Because, well, they will. Yeah, they might. But the thing is, I don't care. It's not, for me, it's like, I listen to some Weasels making sounds on YouTube, and to me it was like, and it kind of sounded like that, but I don't need to imitate them.
Right.
I just need to do my own version of it, and then make that real, because anybody who comes after me, it's like, I'm sorry, guys, it's fictional character, It's like, it's not, there aren't real.
But you are setting a bar.
It's not
pretty
real
high.
human-sized Weasel. So I just need to kind of find what is fun to do. I do my and then be able to live within it, and then having that as that's now the scope. That's what I make these sounds. I have this range of sounds, and then starting from there, I play it like any other character. You're just, like I'm trying to live the emotional reality and the truth of everything that's going on.
How does it look in a script? Like, do you have dialogue? Like, does it say in all caps Weasel and then just exactly
like written in the script?
Or is it kind of just like scene direction?
Yeah, no, it's pretty much all stage direction type stuff.
Yeah,
and it may say that he shrieks or screams or something like that, but it just basically describes what he's doing. And then when I get in the booth, it's like, okay, we need some effort here, maybe some longing, maybe some, it's always fun to be in the booth and have them say, all right, Sean, if you don't mind, we need some longer, slower licks. When Weasel is licking himself.
Do you think Weasel cleans himself? We were talking about it.
He does. We see him.
Yeah, we literally
we see him
cleaning
I
himself.
still think he stinks, though. I don't know if it's the way he's drawn. You think he smells good, or?
No, I do not. I do not think Weasel smells good. But, he's got a lot to clean. I mean, imagine if,
we all manage it.
Cats clean themselves pretty well, but, if they were human-sized, it'd be a lot.
Yeah, they'd spend all day doing it.
I feel like cats would figure it out, though. Cats don't want to get caught outside smelling,
Yeah,
I don't think
that's
Weasel
true.
has those standards.
He doesn't have those things.
You also talked before about how you tie the motion to the actual character and all those things, and these characters are so diametrically opposed. One is verbal and still because he's trapped, and the other is all motion and nonverbal. Do you find your toolkit as an actor has expanded playing these two characters in the same project that are the opposite in their performance?
I think so. I think that it's really, I mean, one thing that I just have to do is separate them. And I've been learning how to do that. Oddly, it's not ever something I would have imagined I needed to figure out how to do in my career. But like, when I did Guardians of the Galaxy, I'm playing Kraglin and playing Rocket oftentimes on the same day. And so I'm preparing for two different characters and separating them. And so I'm really doing the same thing here. I have to almost look at them as two different jobs, even though they're in the same show, in the same universe. And so, yeah, I think that it's changed my game a little bit. It's changed my relationship with how I go about performing. I'm always trying to get better. I just want to be that actor who, like, every time you see me, it's like I've gotten better. It's what drives me more than anything. So those initial complaints I have about, like, oh, I don't know, there's enough here. There's not enough for me to sink my teeth into. It's like, like from Suicide Squad, obstacles are opportunities. So like I try to really turn that into, like, wait a minute, how do I bring as much depth to these characters as I can? And they just have less to work with. They don't have as much. They're not as skilled at communication as the other characters are. So how do I do that? And that's a fun challenge.
I have one last question for you. I'm the civilian of the group. I'm not like the comic book expert. However, I'm a huge Gilmore Girls fan.
Nice.
I've seen it twice. What is the fandom like for you comparatively? I mean, like the Gilmore Girls army, I would say, versus, the people who know you from this genre world.
The Gilmore Girls fan base is more nuts in some ways. But also it's been around for so long.
Yeah.
I describe Gilmore Girls as the show that never dies.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that in a bad way. It's great. I hope that it lives forever. But it is weird because you're right, the fan bases are very different.
Yeah.
And I travel and I do a lot of Comic Cons, which is great because I get to visit a lot of different cities, meet a lot of different people who have different sort of tastes, and I meet a lot of couples who, one is a big Gilmore Girls fan, and the other is a big, DC or Marvel fan, and that's really cool. I like it. The rare time when the genders are reversed.
Yeah,
and
I was about to ask.
And it's the wife who's really into the superhero stuff, and it's the husband that's into Gilmore Girls, which
unexpected
happens from time to time.
Yeah,
Sean Gunn, the man of the people.
Oh, I love it. Yeah. I like
everyone.
trying to bring people together. It's great.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We love Creature Commandos.
Yeah,
here.
this is such a fun show.
Of course. Yeah, thanks. I really, it's really, I'm very grateful to be able to do projects like this that I feel really strongly about. And it's easy to go and promote them and say, hey, watch this, because I think it's really special. And I think it is a really, really great piece of work and an interesting piece of work to come right out of this kind of new incarnation of the DCU. So I'm very excited for people to see it.
Amazing. Well, you guys can all watch Creature Commandos Catch Up. It is streaming on Max right now.
Yep.
We love it. And then you guys can ask questions, wonder whether or not G.I. Robot has feelings, because he's my favorite. And thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for coming by.
Thank you. Absolutely.
Let's start with the finale.
Creature Commandos.
Of Creature Commandos. I mean, what a ride this entire series has been.
Yeah, it's been really fun. Again, I'm not a comic books person. I'm not really an animated adult animation person, but I have to say I really enjoyed this.
I was gonna say we're slowly turning in Coy.
I like it. Week to week, I'm seeing it.
Yeah.
But a bunch of stuff happened this episode. We got Nina's origins. Frankenstein, I think, was killed. We also lost Nina.
Yeah.
Tear. Okay. We found out that Circe's vision was true.
Yeah.
And we got a new roster for any future Creature Commandos.
Right.
So.
Well, I want to say first, the Nina origin was kind of surprising to me because I was like, oh, this is like a creature from the Black Lagoon kind of coded character. So, but I mean, also like leading up to it, I should have known it would be a little bit more human and personable. Yeah.
But yeah, Nina, this entire time, it's clear that she has not been in the streets like everyone else, right? And that's why she's been reacting this way to everything that's been going on. I don't think she's ever been exposed to this level of violence.
Right.
I thought there's actually a character called Cyborg. Have you heard of him?
I think so.
He is a character. He's been in Justice League. He's in Young Justice as well, in the Teen Titans. He's iconic.
Okay.
But his plight has always been that he had one type of future, and his father, who was a scientist, in a desperate attempt to save his life, turns him into a cyborg with some sketchy tech, right?
Okay.
And I got that same feeling of this iconic story when I was watching Nina, where the father just wanted her to exist.
Yeah.
You know, he just loved her so much, and he did any means to do so, even if it was a little weird.
Yeah.
And to me, I felt like I was watching a story of like the troubles of someone who has a special needs child.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah.
Like even the mother kind of giving up and being upset was all like, this is way harder than it needs to be.
Right, yeah.
And it just shows like the amount of patience and time and work that goes into like having a child.
Right. I mean, that is sort
help.
of like the beautiful thing about this show is that all these characters are so relatable in different ways. I mean, the whole point of it is that, you know, are they monsters because that's how they were created, or is it because of how they're seen? And I think that like we've learned that most of them are just seen as such, as opposed to being like monstrous people. Coy, how does like is this like origin story track with her comics?
So that's what's fun about Nina is there's not a lot of Creature Commandos comics. There's actually like runs of characters from Creature Commandos that aren't called Creature Commandos. There's one called Agents of Shade, and then there's another that is like more Frankenstein-centric without a team that Nina's in. But she has two very different origins, even though she's got very limited print time. So I was really excited because I didn't know which way they'd go. And one of her origins, it's as the show is, which is her dad had to develop this, and she, you know, developed into this over time with love and protection. But there's another one where I think as a commentary on that one, you find her dad actually stole her and she is of that race, and he took her from that race of creatures that she was.
Okay.
So I was wondering throughout whether the twist was going to be the double, whether it was going to be that. But then I got to really invest in this story that was kind of a double James Gunn-ism where he has no problem killing off guys. Like he kills a lot of dudes, but I don't see him killing a lot of female characters. He's very protective. He's very nurturing. So the whole time I was thinking like, who's gonna die in the finale? And the only character I thought was safe was Nina. The whole season I was like, you know, Nina's probably safe because I was waiting on her origin and I thought it was gonna be a flashback that was part of the episode. We got everyone's flashback. We didn't get Rick Flag's, which I like because I feel like he's our eye line.
But you sort of know.
And we build with him.
Yeah, we know a lot about him too.
And the son is kind of like that. We don't need it. But I love that Nina was a double down because her origin does the thing in great writing where you love the character the most right before they kill him. And it was the only character I thought was safe. And we got an official canon DCU origin from those two disparate origins in the comics.
Yes, there are risks involved, certainly. But if it pays off, poor sweet Nina won't need to lug around an extra 30 pounds of metal to stay alive. We're transforming her very DNA to help her breathe despite the fluid in her lungs.
I feel like they kind of play into that innocence of Nina. I'm glad they went that route with her origin because it also kind of drives home the point that Amanda Waller was keeping these people in captivity, you know, and most of them were innocent. I think Dr. Phosphorus was the only one who's like, wasn't innocent.
I would love to hear the ranking, you know, the scale
of like who's the most innocent.
Yeah, to innocent with Nina and Phosphorus on either end.
No matter what, I think that is what it is. Like Nina for sure is the most innocent. I mean, I guess a debate could be made for Weasel, but we see him do some questionable things since then. Nina's never killed anyone that we know of. And so her first kill was going to be, the princess. And that was something that she didn't take lightly. And she only did one because her newest friend and her closest, ally told her that the fate of the world was on it. And she went in there with that weight and then got clapped. And, and I think that was so tragic. And what I found interesting was that was the first moment I was like, man, it was too easy for that princess to kill this girl in water. And there's a moment where we see a darkness in the princess' eyes, and then we see her kind of go back to the doe-eyed princess. And it made me question her motivations with Rick Flag Sr., right? I never questioned whether or not she was attracted to him because, like, I'm a real person and I was attracted to this cartoon. Right? But then now I'm like,
and now you think she may have been playing him the whole time.
I mean, it's proven that she is, right?
Yeah.
Like, we find out that she did do all of this to kind of disarm him. And, we were asking, like, is Rick Flag
It's a little convenient for her, I have to say.
What?
That he's so hot.
Right?
I mean, it's not like she didn't work very hard for it,
It could, I mean, obviously, I think it is convenient, and I'm sure her and Circe were like having a giggle. Like, she was like, "Hey, I mean, it could have been worse."
Yeah.
I'm sure they were talking about it.
That moment in the water was cool because if you're watching it from the show perspective, it is that reveal for the princess, and you get to be like, "Which way was it? We've been wondering this whole time." Like, she got to be a mystery, and I really liked that the show was written so well. It actually was a mystery. I didn't know. I knew I distrusted the princess in the beginning, but I was like, do I have my own biases? And then I was wondering throughout, but also in the comic books, in the one run, The Frankenstein and the Creatures of the Unknown, Nina is very much the innocent we see her here. But in Agents of Shade, she actually leads the team. So I was wondering if it was going to be, once she gets her first kill, is she going to suddenly become like the bride's position where she's like the leadership role? So it was cool that one split could have led Nina in either direction.
No. I don't know how to kill someone.
You shove the blade into her belly and twist. The water is yours. Home field advantage. She won't even see you coming.
Yeah, I felt like that scene overall gave me so much anxiety, right? Because at that moment, I'm like, no, don't kill the princess.
Yeah.
And I didn't want that to darken Nina. Like, if she did go through with it, also getting Rick Flag, like, I'm like, please understand what he's saying, Amanda. And like, wondering if she would actually react to it favorably.
Right.
And I think that's a theme that happened with all of the fight scenes in this episode. I think it had the most fight scenes of any episode.
And Weasel the whole time, he's not fighting, but he's fighting against. I love the Weasel element of like his stuff with the pack and him finally finding a wolf pack and then him leaving that to go protect his people. But the whole time he's fighting against his instincts and he wants to save her. And that was such a beautiful internal fight, and Phosphorus almost making it a physical fight, which was terrifying.
I feel like with Phosphorus fighting Rick Flag Sr. and also when he fought Weasel, I felt like in both fights, it was like a brother fighting. Like, obviously he's very dangerous, but there was like a sibling, like, friendship
he's holding
aspect.
back a little bit. He could have easily destroyed them. Yeah.
Look at you scaling.
Yeah.
One of my favorite images of the show is him like double middle fingering going through the tanks. Yeah. We know what he's capable of. Yeah. So he's clearly got some energy of brotherliness towards them.
And there's also the fight.
Or maybe it's just, again, self-preservation, I think, is a theme with a lot of these villains. We talked about this back when we talked about the Penguin. Is he doing it for a brotherhood or allyship, or just like, I need this ally right now?
Yeah.
You know?
I don't know how much he values Weasel and his input. And I think it's already been established in the Suicide Squad too. He doesn't have to worry about, like, if I kill him, what would Amanda Waller do? These people are disposable to her too. But you may be correct. Like, maybe he's like, I think a little bit was feeling. I think a bit of it was, I don't want to hurt him. But yeah, maybe some of it was self-preservation. But speaking of self-preservation, we got to talk about The Bride versus Frankenstein. That was like almost cathartic to me. I felt the catharsis she did to whoop his ass.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And be free of it.
Be free. Yeah. Like, we watched him chase her through decades.
Yeah. I hunt centuries, I would say.
Yeah.
No, I love The Bride. I think, again, like, I think it's a really interesting twist on that character. I think just even the character, she's the bride, which I think that her identity is always wrapped up in the man that she was created for. And so, like, it's always been a struggle for her to like be seen as something else.
I agree. It's so hard to fight that identity and have it tied into it. And I was kind of happy, even though I loved Frankenstein's character. I loved David and what he put into that character. When he fell, I was like, I hope he's dead. Was the first thing.
Well, here's another debate. Is Frankenstein alive? Is the bride alive?
I think they're alive. They're reanimated, right?
Yeah,
so that would suggest that they're alive.
Did you guys see the post-credit scene?
Oh.
What was the post-credit scene?
I didn't see the post-credit.
Yeah, there's a post-credit scene.
Frankenstein is alive.
Oh no!
Damn.
I was like, thought we were talking metaphorically, but then I realized like,
I didn't know. I missed it too. Well, fuck that guy.
I'm so sorry for there's a post-credit scene. And
Damn.
Did I see the post-credit scene?
It's him. It's him sitting across from another old woman, which is very ominous.
Now I'm only more sure of the connection we have. What kind of soup is this?
Sparrow dropping soup.
Tastes disgusting.
And he's patched up, and the last line he has is, and it just means she loves me more because she's so passionate. It's still him doing his thing.
Well, the lesson here
I mean,
is...
first of all, you have no business not knowing.
No. Shame on me.
I was just sitting there like,
that
do
is,
I
like,
know I say?
pretty standard
It's
for your
pretty
world.
standard to watch things to the end.
Yeah.
It is
just
so
in case.
standard.
Anyone that missed it, check out the post-credit scene.
I've definitely failed the city. I failed the show. I failed you,
The
Tyler.
Commandos, yeah.
I appreciate if you guys respect me at this
Okay,
time.
all right, fine.
But yes, well, so he's alive. Still fuck that guy.
All right, fuck that guy, yeah.
Still fuck him. But definitely, I loved seeing the bride get that moment for herself, and then later see her become a leader. And I also I think the most harrowing fight of that episode was Nina versus the princess, because I didn't want either one of them to die at that moment.
Is it because you didn't? I mean, why not the princess?
I thought she was innocent, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, all because Amanda Waller.
She was bad.
You thought she was bad?
Yeah.
I still thought she was innocent because I guess because I don't like Amanda Waller.
Uh-huh.
I love her as a character. I think she's
Right.
an incredible character.
But you're not rooting for her.
Yeah, right now in the comic book, she's doing like almost xenophobic things. Like she's not good, and she's so against superheroes, and I think that's why she was like, to your point, she was so ready to believe in Circe, who they were just trying to clap a second earlier.
Right, yeah.
And so I was like, I want her to be innocent. And I also felt like, I don't know, I liked the character.
Right.
And then for Nina, the innocence there, I didn't want her to lose her innocence
Right.
by killing this woman.
Right.
And I didn't fathom Nina dying. That wasn't the anxiety. I was afraid of Nina's innocence and not
the death of her innocence, not the death of her personhood.
Yeah, so when I was like, whoa, they're really doing this. That's why they were probably comfortable with her swimming in an open lake, because they're like, she can handle herself.
Yeah.
You know?
Because we've been the baddies the whole time. Like, they knew what they were doing. I also really like that they had that moment, like you said, the doe eyes coming out of the water, because we got to see as an audience that something was wrong, but I did not, again, the writing was so good, I didn't even put together that Clayface might be that shadowy figure in the frame. And I was like, it was right in front of me, and I love when writing can be like, well, duh, why didn't I see that?
I felt as dumb as I did when I found out there was a post-credits.
Yeah.
I'm not going to hold you.
Well,
but
before we got to the credits, the ending of the show proper does like, I mean, I assume sets up for a second season.
Absolutely.
But with new characters
With
who
new
I'm
characters.
gonna need some explanations for.
There's one character that we met before.
Yes, the shark.
King Shark.
Yeah, I recognize that.
Wow.
King Shark, he knows him.
King
He's a
Shark.
god of shark. He's an actual god, and I love that character. I'm excited
Okay.
to see him back. And I like that it was perfect that he would be out of the Suicide Squad. He'd be out of Task Force X into M because he is a creature. One of our characters is Nosferatu, a female vampire. We also saw Callus, who's a mummy, who is now in there as well.
And the return of our fave, G.I. Robot.
Oh, yeah, that's
and
right.
He got new gear. And I was so excited to see him come back. Like, I was sad when he blew up.
Yeah.
I was very sad.
I'm legit excited for season 2 or for live action takes in live action more than I would have thought possible at the start of the season. I knew I'd like the show.
Right.
I didn't think I'd be like, I can't wait for G.I. Robot's next appearance, and I so am.
So what do you think? I mean, like in a perfect scenario, like how would you want these characters to like kind of navigate.
I think
through
the
DCU.
perfect scenario is kind of already coming into fruition because this isn't. Sometimes you watch a show and you're like, I don't know if I'll ever see these characters again. But it's already been established that this is a part of the DCU. So we're definitely going to see some of these characters. Maybe there'll be another season of Creature Commandos, but we're going to see some of them in all of these other properties. And that's what makes this medium so exciting. And I think that's what makes this show so important is that we know the events that we saw in this is going to impact the future properties. We know that in some way, shape, or form, we're going to see these characters again. Maybe not all of them. But we're gonna see him either live action in another.
We've seen
thing.
Rick Flag Sr. in a flash in the Peacemaker teaser.
Right.
Yeah.
So we know that's soon because we saw Batman in a flash in the Dr. Phosphorus flashback. Maybe we see a live action Dr. Phosphorus in Batman, which would be exciting because that character I feel like is gonna look great in live action.
Yeah.
And there's also the opportunity to do. I've said it a few times, but I'm really fascinated by it because this is the first thing. What is the medium use in each thing? I don't think we'll see them animated in this style in live action. I think it'll be like a CGI take. But since we got the Xbox in footage, since we got the live action Efron, since we got the live action movie in TV, what I'm really curious about is the intended multimedia blending. So I think they'll always be in their appropriate format for the greater story. So I'd love to see David Harbour as Frankenstein. But when we get to Dynamic Duo as puppets, will we get to see maybe Frankenstein as a puppet and see the evolution of the genre, and then he's voicing a puppet? Like, there's just so much possibility.
Endless possibilities. But how do you feel about this? And the
look, I love this show. I thought it was really fun, and again, like not something that I would normally dive into. So I'm glad I did.
Wow. Final thoughts, Coy?
I think it's going to make me read a lot of comics I didn't read in the 60s and 70s, in an era that I didn't read a lot of. And that's one of my favorite things about James Gunn is not only does he show me characters that I've like either glanced over, but he introduces me to ones and gives them relevance to the point where if I had read that as a kid or even last year before I met these characters, I might have been like, fine. But now I've got so much connection to them, it's going to enhance my experience of them in another medium. So he makes me love comics more than I already did, which you might imagine is a lot.
Yeah, this series made me feel, I want to say, vindicated. I've been an advocate for DC for a very long time, even before DC Studios started. And now I feel confirmed. I have so much hope for this DC universe. It looks so good. And for an animated series to slap this hard, I just know all the future projects.
You feel like you're in good hands.
I feel like I'm in excellent hands. I could kick my feet up.
Yeah.
And I cannot wait for all these people to be up in my DMs. Frankie, this is great. What does this mean? I'm going to say, I'm going to welcome them. I'm a good person.
You're going to say like, oh, you should read this. You should read this.
You know,
just saying the DC Universe Infinite app has a lot of these comics you can check out. It's a subscription service that I recommend.
Well, you in?
What else I got to do?